It has been 8 long years of trying to get a Bitcoin ETF in the United States, but it is finally here. The first ever Bitcoin futures ETF just went live in the United States this past Tuesday, and it is already doing some record numbers. And in this video, we're going to be going over exactly what this means for Bitcoin and the future of the crypto space as a whole. But before we start, Alfacash is a great platform where you can buy, sell, and exchange all cryptocurrencies, digital assets, and other blockchain tokens. So be sure to hit the link in the description below and start trading today. And this is a brand new channel, so go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get into it. 8 years ago, the first ever Bitcoin ETF was submitted to the SEC by none other than the Winklevoss twins. And you may know them as the alleged creators of Facebook, but they ultimately rebranded their mark on the world when they became some of the first Bitcoin billionaires in the entire world. But the ETF that they submitted was ultimately declined, as were dozens of ETFs that were submitted after that. That is until this past Tuesday when the first Bitcoin futures ETF was put into action after it was passed by the SEC earlier this past month. And the firm behind this financial instrument is ProShares, which is an American investment provider. And the ticker for this will be BITO. This means that this is the first time that American investors have exposure to Bitcoin without actually directly buying the asset. And now BITO is a derivative, which means that its shares prices are based on another asset. So in this case, the ETF tracks Bitcoin futures contracts. So now before we go any further, I think we should understand exactly what a future is. Futures represent an agreement to buy or sell shares in an underlying ETF or at an agreed upon price on or before a specified date in the future. So to make this easier, let's just go over a quick example. So let's just say I'm buying a futures contract for, let's say, gasoline for $100. That means that at the time that that contract expires, no matter what the actual price is of gasoline, I agreed that I will pay $100 for it. So this means that at the time of the expiration, if the actual price of gasoline is, say, $125, I still only have to pay $100, which means I get a profit of $25. And now on the opposite end of that, say I still have that same contract to buy for $100. Say at the end of the contract, the price of gasoline is only $75. That means that I still have to pay $100 even though the price is actually lower, which means that I get a loss of profit. And now this Bitcoin futures ETF should not be confused with a spot ETF, where a spot ETF gives you exposure to the exact price of the asset itself at that time. However, we just went over what a futures ETF is. Obviously, it's different than a spot. It doesn't track directly the price of it at that exact moment. And ultimately, these spot ETFs are actually a better way to gain exposure to Bitcoin, but I think that this is kind of going to be the next iteration of it. Ultimately, the futures ETF is just kind of the first baby step. So on Tuesday, the initial price of each share of this ETF started at $40 at the beginning of the day, and it ended up at $41 by the afternoon. And just on this first day, this Bitcoin ETF raised over $1 billion in volume. And that's literally insane. It's just showing how many people want exposure to Bitcoin. And just in the expectation of this huge news, Bitcoin already rose over 18% in this last week. And with this, many analysts are talking about all the future prices of what Bitcoin could hit by the end of the year. And a lot of people are talking about that Bitcoin hitting that magic $100,000 mark by the end of this year, or at least by the beginning of 2022. I think that if we continue to kind of rally as we are and keep in the bull market that we're already in, I definitely see this being a possibility. Ultimately, this news is not only great for Bitcoin, but it's also good for a lot of other cryptocurrencies such as Ethereum. And during this same time period, Ethereum already rose over 14%. And I mean, who knows, with all this going on, we might even see an Ethereum ETF come out in the future sometime too. Overall, this is just a huge milestone for not only Bitcoin, but the entire cryptocurrency space. And it's really starting a new chapter where the legacy system is really getting involved and joining the crypto revolution. And now, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And to keep up even more with the crypto space, you can check out our blog at blog.alpha.cash. See you next time.